Thanksgiving morning. 9:43 a.m. Jake stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, his voice ice cold. "You're old and in the way. This house needs a real family now." By Christmas Eve, I had lost everything. A $1.2 million engagement, a half-renovated estate in East Hampton, and the last ounce of belief I had in what people call family. My name is Vincent Grayson. I'm 68. I served 38 years as a federal judge. Built a legacy, not just of rulings, but of fairness, quiet, methodical fairness. And still, they thought they could steal my life while smiling in my face. If you've ever had someone you love set a trap behind your back, drop your city in the comments. I want to know who else saw the betrayal coming too late. And if you've ever been the one left staring at a signature you didn't write, on a form you never approved, subscribe. Because the story you're about to hear, it doesn't end in silence. It ends in justice. And I want you to remember 3 things as we go. A forged power of attorney, a ring camera buried in the azalea bush, and 1 yellow envelope marked, "If anything happens to me." Let's rewind. Back to where this all began. The day I retired from the bench. I thought my story would slow down. After decades of reading case law, writing opinions, and watching people unravel in courtrooms, I was ready for peace. I had saved carefully $11.4 million in investments, property, and retirement accounts. My home was a 200-year-old estate in East Hampton, carefully restored over 2 decades. A red 1956 Porsche lived in my garage. Right next to a worn wooden bench my late wife had once stained with her morning coffee. I had no wild hobbies, no desperate need to travel the world. All I wanted was a quiet life filled with books, music, and soft mornings. Then came Natalie. She walked into my life at a preservation gala, of all places. An architect in her late 30s, Natalie specialized in restoring historic homes. She said she admired my estate. I said I admired her eye for detail. We started slowly. Dinners became weekends. Weekends turned into months. She moved in after 6, proposed after 10, and suddenly, my quiet retirement was full of blueprints and possibilities. Natalie brought someone else with her. 2, her adult son. Jake, 34. Sharp dresser. Lots of talk about startups and branding. He told me he'd just sold off his last venture. Natalie confided that he'd lost nearly everything. I wasn't naive, but I was in love. And when someone you love says their child needs a hand, you offer it. So I did. Jake moved into the guest house. He needed help with rent. I paid it. Credit card debt. I cleared $24,000. Back taxes covered those. 2. Natalie called it a second chance. Jake called me judge. I told myself this was family now. A blended one. Natalie redecorated. Jake played nice. But somewhere between the brunches and the wine tastings, I began to notice my daughter, Clara, disappearing. She hadn't visited in months. When I called, it went to voicemail. Then one day, I got a text from her 2 sentences long. "I can't believe you replaced Mom this fast. Don't contact me again." That message broke something I didn't want to admit. In trying to build a new life, I had let go of the only person left from the old one. Looking back now, that was the first trade I made. A daughter for a stranger's son. And I didn't even realize it. But I would, sooner than I thought, because by the time I opened the yellow envelope, Jake and Natalie had already signed my name to documents I had never seen. And by the time I realized what they'd taken, it wasn't just money. It was control. And that, to a man like me, was the real betrayal. You see, it didn't happen all at once. That's what made it so dangerous. It came in layers. Little sacrifices disguised as kindness. A missed birthday dinner. A signed check. Acquis compromise. I told myself it was temporary. Natalie was planning our engagement party. Jake was in between business deals. And I was just trying to enjoy retirement without turning into one of those bitter old men who complains about the music being too loud. But slowly, I became a sponsor instead of a partner. Natalie's design firm suddenly had a new office rented in my name. Jake needed just a bit more for his next venture. That bit turned into 10,000, then 15. Before I knew it, I had given him over $42,000. And that wasn't counting the Mercedes I signed over because his old car died on the L. When I asked Clara, my daughter, if she wanted to come to the engagement dinner, she sent one sentence back. I hope she loves you for you, not your bank account. The knife was subtle, but it cut deep. I kept thinking, I'm the adult here. I've lived. I've loved. Surely I can see through people by now. But when you're lonely, when the house echoes too much, it's easy to mistake politeness for loyalty. Jake knew exactly how to play it. He'd call me sir in front of guests, offered to pour the wine, made sure to ask about my classic car collection with just the right amount of awe. But the truth, he didn't care about the cars, the house, or the history. He cared about access. And Natalie, well, she was more subtle than Jake. She started rearranging the home, always saying, "Don't you think this feels more modern?" My late wife's reading chair was too dark for the room. Family portraits were swapped for architectural renderings of what the estate could be. She wasn't tearing it down. She was replacing it. Quietly. Completely. The guest list for our engagement party didn't include Clara. Natalie said, "Let's give her space. She'll come around." But she never did. Instead, I got a note 2 days later. No envelope. Just a card. Dropped at the front gate. "If you need me, I'm here. But not while they are." That was the beginning of the divide I didn't know how to stop. I'd spent my whole life judging right from wrong, hearing the worst sides of people in open court, and believing naively that home would always be different. But Jake, he became the golden child overnight. He got the guest house, free utilities, even started calling the property our estate. Natalie encouraged it. He's finally settling down. She told me one evening as we stood in the kitchen, "You're giving him the stability his father never could." And I nodded, like a fool, because I wanted to believe it. I was buying into the story, that I was building something good, that maybe, just maybe, I was giving Jake the father figure he never had. But what I didn't see was that he wasn't building anything. He was digging, and I was the foundation he was hollowing out. It wasn't until the morning I found my financial planner's call log rerouted that I realized something was wrong. But we'll get to that, because what came next? That was the moment everything I believed about trust, about love, about family cracked open for good. It started small. It always does. A missed voicemail. A password reset email I never requested. Then one morning, I tried calling Andrew, my financial planner of nearly 2 decades, and got his assistant instead. She sounded confused. "Judge Grayson, I thought you changed your primary contact. Your stepson Jake's been handling updates." That call stopped me cold. I hadn't changed a thing. And Jake, he had no business talking to Andrew. I asked for the logs. She emailed me a copy. Dozens of calls, all logged under Jake's cell number. Requests for balance checks, portfolio transfers, all disguised as approved reallocation strategies. At first, I told myself there had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe Natalie authorized something on my behalf. Maybe Jake was just helping. But that night, I went to the study. I opened the bottom drawer of my safe where I kept my legal papers, originals only. Power of attorney, healthcare directives, estate planning forms. And what I found wasn't what I'd left. The signatures looked familiar. They were mine. Except they weren't. The pen pressure was wrong. The line work too smooth. Almost like someone had practiced. Multiple times. That's when my stomach dropped. I called Bennett, my personal attorney. He drove over that same night with a document examiner. The verdict, Vincent, he said, laying the papers on my kitchen table. This signature was traced. You didn't sign this. And if you didn't, someone else has been making decisions under your name. The weight of that sentence hit me like a gavel. I wanted to believe Natalie didn't know, that Jake had acted alone. But deep down, I knew better. The very next day, George, my groundskeeper of 20 years, sent me a short text. Check the ring footage from Thursday. Backyard trash cans. I sat in my study and pulled up the app. There he was. Jake. 1:15 in the morning. Wearing gloves. Carrying a banker's box. He paused in front of the camera, probably didn't even know it was there, then flipped the lid. Inside folders. Labeled in my handwriting. POA. Trust. Medical. He dumped them into the bin like they were junk mail and walked away. I froze the frame. Replayed it. I knew those documents. I'd written notes on the margins. Those weren't copious. They were the originals. I felt my throat tighten, not from fear, but from rage. I showed Natalie the clip that evening. Her eyes widened for half a second. Then she covered it up fast. "Oh, honey," she said, trying to laugh it off. Jake probably thought they were old drafts. I told him to help declutter. I didn't answer. Instead, I logged into my Fidelity account. I hadn't checked it in weeks, maybe months. When the page loaded, Mayaf locked. Transfers. Multiple. Small at first. Then larger. All routed to a limited liability corporation. I didn't recognize Grayson East Ventures. My name. Their shell. I cross-checked it with business registration records. Jake's name was listed as the managing partner. Over 14 months, they had siphoned out $243,780. Stealth withdrawals. Dummy invoices. Fabricated vendor names like Eastline Interiors and Hampton Site Consulting. Everything looked legitimate until you knew where to look. They weren't just stealing money. They were building a paper trail to prove I wasn't capable of managing it. And that's when the deeper fear crept in. What if this wasn't just about cash? What if they were setting up something worse? The next breadcrumb answered that. In a folder I hadn't opened in over a year, I found a printed document labeled Cognitive Screening Report, Dr. Prence's. Alvin Pierce. I didn't recognize the doctor. Didn't remember the test. The results: signs of early onset decline. Recommend power of attorney transfer and limited capacity for financial oversight. But here's the thing, I never saw that doctor. And neither had my insurance. The clinic was fake. The document was forged. Natalie had gone as far as fabricating medical proof that I was losing my mind. And that's when I stopped being the victim. That's when I started preparing for war. Once I saw that fake cognitive report, everything snapped into focus. This wasn't just theft. This was a takeover. A silent coup wrapped in sweet smiles and whispered concerns. And now, I had to answer 3 questions. What happened exactly? Who else was involved? And how long had they been planning this? The surface layer was clear. Jake and Natalie had stolen nearly $250,000. They forged my signature, faked medical records, and accessed accounts behind my back. But it went deeper than that, because they weren't trying to just take money. They were trying to take me, my identity, my independence, my home. Natalie had laid the groundwork months earlier. Little comments to neighbors. Vince has been forgetting things lately. Canceling my social events. Claiming I needed rest. Convincing our friends I was slowing down. And me, I chalked it up to retirement. Didn't notice how often she started taking phone calls behind closed doors. Didn't think twice when she changed the alarm code and said, "It's safer this way." The second layer was the conspiracy. Bennett, my attorney, called in a forensic investigator named Laura. Sharp, quiet, unshakable. She confirmed the document trail. The fake contractor invoices all linked to a shared Dropbox folder owned by Jake. The medical report written on a repurposed PDF from a Florida hospice clinic that had closed 3 years earlier. The digital signature of Dr. Alvin Pierce stolen from a LinkedIn profile photo of a retired dentist. Every lie had been layered carefully. Every breadcrumb designed to look clean until examined under the right light. Then came the most chilling part. The timeline. This didn't start overnight. It started 18 months ago, right after I proposed to Natalie. That's when she first mentioned, almost casually, that I seemed different. That I repeated stories. Left the stove on. Got a few names wrong. None of it was true, but enough repetition. And even I started second-guessing myself. It was classic gaslighting. They planted forgetfulness, then built paperwork to prove it. Natalie booked the memory test under a fake clinic name and drove me there herself. She said it was a precaution. Just routine. I remember sitting in the waiting room, staring at the fake palm tree in the corner and wondering why it all felt so staged. The nurse never spoke. The doctor kept the exam under 15 minutes. Now I know why. They didn't need answers. They just needed my presence on camera to justify the report later. And that yellow envelope, that was my grandmother's idea. Years ago, she told me, if you ever feel something's off, write it down. Don't wait for proof. Start collecting it. So I did. The moment I confirmed the signature was forged, I opened a blank legal pad and wrote day 1. Jake. Safe tampered. Signature traced. Every day after that, I documented every call, every email, every time Natalie told someone I was having a rough day, and every time Jake conveniently offered to handle it for me. My Ring camera caught him sneaking out with the first box of papers. My study chair's audio recorder hidden beneath the cushion captured him talking to Natalie late at night. One clip still rings in my head. Jake's voice. Low and smug. Once we get him declared, it's over. He won't even know we moved him out. And Natalie's reply. We'll say it's for his own good. No one questions early onset cases anymore. The way they talked about me like I was furniture, a problem to be relocated. But I wasn't gone yet. And I wasn't nearly as weak as they assumed. Because while they were planning how to erase me, I was already collecting evidence. And with every whisper they thought I didn't hear, I was one step closer to the courtroom. They didn't just betray me. They underestimated me. And that was their final mistake. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. I didn't even change the locks. Because I knew this wasn't about shouting. It was about precision. I had one chance to dismantle everything they built, and I wasn't going to waste it on emotion. The next morning, I made 3 calls. First, to Laura, my forensic investigator. Second, to a probate lawyer named Calvin Moore, retired military. No, nonsense. And third, to an old friend of mine, Judy, who'd retired from the county clerk's office after nearly 40 years. She owed me a favor. By the time the sun had set that day, I had copies of every document Jake and Natalie had touched. And I had a new will drawn up, one they couldn't access or contest. Step by step, I began reversing what they did. I didn't ask for their permission. I didn't warn them. I just acted. While they were busy playing house in my guest suite, I transferred the deed to the lakefront property into an LLC under my control. Jake thought he owned it now. He didn't realize the paperwork he filed had 3 key errors, all intentional. C. Bennett and I had baited him. We let him file using an outdated title version, knowing the county would reject it once flagged. We needed him to commit the fraud completely before striking. Then I filed a quiet title action, freezing any claim Jake could make. Meanwhile, Calvin filed a formal petition to challenge the medical capacity ruling. Natalie tried to push through. With Laura's digital proof and Judy's notarized testimony, we had more than enough to prove fabrication. Natalie had no idea that the clinic she used was legally defunct. She'd put her name on the form as caretaker and signed under perjury. We submitted that entire packet to the state licensing board. And we didn't stop there. Laura had traced over $48,000 worth of invoices funneled through Jake's side business, all billed to my estate. Everything from home maintenance to consulting fees. We gathered bank logs, audio recordings, Ring camera footage. Even the printer logs showed timestamps when Jake printed the fake invoices. And then, I played my hand. Jake came home one afternoon grinning, entitled as ever only to find the garage code had changed. His access card disabled. The guest suite empty of his belongings. I didn't say a word. Didn't give a warning. Instead, I left a simple folder on the counter. Inside, a printed copy of the quiet title freeze, a letter from my attorney, a thumb drive with every shred of evidence, and a post-it note that read, "The system you tried to game, I helped build it." He didn't call. He didn't knock. He left. 2 days later. Natalie received her own package delivered to her office. Inside was the complaint filed with the state health board. The medical license of the doctor she cited had been publicly revoked years earlier, and she had signed off on it anyway. I didn't get revenge through anger. I got it through structure. Everything documented. Everything traceable. They thought I was just a retired widower, someone fading into memory. But I had built my entire career managing other people's assets, reading fine print, and spotting patterns. They forgot that part. And when I sat with my attorney that Friday, watching him file the final set of injunctions, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Calm. Not triumph. Not rage. Just calm. Because the wheels were in motion now. And there was no version of this story where they walked away clean. You'd think, after all those years as a judge, I'd be numb to courtrooms. But this time, I wasn't sitting behind the bench. I was the one seeking justice. The day of the hearing, the courtroom buzzed with a kind of tension I'd only felt during the biggest trials of my career. Melavier, Calvin, stood ready at my side, composed, methodical, not a hint of doubt on his face. Natalie walked in first, her hair pulled back, her suit immaculate, trying to project calm. Jake followed behind, hunched over, eyes darting everywhere except at me. The judge, a woman I once mentored, reviewed the evidence with a slow, surgical precision. First came the forged power of attorney. The handwriting expert explained the inconsistencies, how the strokes on my signature didn't match my real hand, how the ink revealed obvious tracing. Then came the audio evidence, the quiet, damning recordings from my office chair. The room fell silent as Jake's voice played over the speakers, boasting about transitioning the old man out by January, making sure I'd never know what hit me. The Ring camera footage sealed their fate. Jake, caught in high definition, dumping my original legal documents into the trash. Then, Natalie's signature on the medical report. The state licensing board's letter confirmed the clinic was a fabrication, and the doctor had no record anywhere. They showed she'd submitted perjury to the court and to the board itself. Every piece fit together like dominoes. When it was over, the judge barely looked at Jake and Natalie. She addressed the courtroom, her voice steady. "Mr. Grayson retains full legal and medical capacity. The power of attorney is null and void. All fraudulent transfers must be returned. The estate is to be restored, and those found complicit will be reported to the appropriate authorities." Jake was ordered to pay back $184,000. He was assigned to community labor 3 days a week for an entire year, starting with the courthouse custodial crew. Natalie lost her state credentials. Her architectural license was suspended pending a full ethics review. Her firm, eager to cut ties, terminated her contract that very afternoon. But the consequences went beyond legal punishment. Our homeowners association, after reviewing the public records, banned Natalie from holding any future design contracts in the area. Jake, disgraced by the scandal, found himself blacklisted from every local startup incubator. As I left the courthouse, there were reporters outside, shoving microphones and snapping pictures. For the first time, I didn't hide. I stood tall, answered every question, because I knew the truth was finally out. And justice real. Thorough justice had landed on the right side. Later that night, I returned to my estate. It felt emptier than before, but lighter. 2. I poured myself a glass of scotch, sat on the old bench in my garage beside the Porsche, and let the quiet settle in. I didn't get a call from Jake or Natalie that night. I didn't expect one. But a week later, I did get a letter handwritten. Clumsy. Desperate. Jake's apology was simple. I thought I was owed a shortcut. I see now I was wrong. I'll do the work. Natalie never wrote. And that was fine with me. Because justice, I learned, isn't always about seeing someone beg. Sometimes, it's about watching the doors they once slammed in your face finally close for good. 6 months later, my house feels alive again. The shadows are gone, and in their place is something lighter, a piece I thought I'd lost. My daughter Clara visits on Sundays now. We talk, sometimes argue, but mostly, we laugh like we used to. Susanne, once my nurse, has become a true friend. We share coffee and stories, not prescriptions. Jake mops the courthouse floors 3 days a week. Natalie is gone, her name erased from every contract in town. I wish them no harm. Just distance. Looking back, I realize boundaries matter more than blood. Sometimes, the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born with. Would you have pressed charges? Or was justice served, just watching him clean the floors? Comment below. And if you've ever rebuilt after betrayal, hit subscribe. You're not alone. Not ever.